I want to start today by running a scenario past you. Because, well, I actually got an STR from one of our relationship managers last week that looked exactly like this.
All right, let's hear it.
So it's a customer, right? A standard salaried government employee.
Okay.
But over the past 3 months, this guy has been receiving multiple inward transfers from like a dozen different individuals. And it totals around 8 million Nepalese rupees.
Wow. 8 million in 3 months for a government salary account.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the kicker. Every single transfer is carefully sized to be just under the TTR threshold, the threshold transaction reporting limit.
Right, of course. They always are.
So there's absolutely no explanation provided for the funds.
Hmm.
As someone who used to sit on the other side of this at the FIU, what is your very first instinct when that hits your desk?
I mean, my first instinct is that you are looking at a textbook layering operation, probably related to corruption or maybe a localized Hundi network.
Yeah, that's
But,
exactly what we thought.
Because, the structuring alone, keeping it just under the TTR limit, shows deliberate intent to evade automated compliance sweeps. It's not an accident.
Right. It takes effort to do that.
Exactly. And the reason I love that you brought this specific scenario up is because it connects perfectly to what we're going to unpack today.
Yes, it really does. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we're looking at an exclusive stack of intelligence. We've got our hands on FIU Nepal's recent trends and typologies reports.
And we're also pulling from their strategic analysis across 2023 and 2024.
Right. And our mission today is straightforward, but honestly, incredibly complex. We're going to decode exactly how illicit money is moving right now in Nepal.
Yeah, we're moving way past the theory today.
Exactly. Past the textbooks and right into the raw operational data, because I'm looking at this material from the perspective of someone running an AML compliance department at a mid-sized commercial bank.
Which is a tough job right now.
It really is. My entire world revolves around detection, managing customer friction, having really difficult conversations with my board of directors, and most importantly, trying to figure out if the suspicious transaction reports, the STRs that my team files, are actually hitting the mark.
Right. And I'm approaching this from the other side of that exact same wall. As a former analyst inside the Financial Intelligence Unit, my lens is focused on the intelligence routing.
The big picture stuff.
Exactly. The systemic patterns and the ultimate end game of these funds. Because there is this massive, frustrating disconnect in our industry.
Oh, tell me about it. We file the reports, and they just feel like they vanish into a black hole.
I know, I hear that all the time. But inside the FIU, those reports are literally the raw fuel for tactical and strategic analysis.
So they don't just sit in a drawer.
No, absolutely not. But you have to understand how the FIU actually works. It's established under the Asset Laundering Prevention Act of 2008, specifically Section 9.
Right, as an autonomous unit within the Nepal Rastra Bank.
Right. And its legal mandate has 4 distinct functions. It's designed to receive, analyze, disseminate, and cooperate.
But it's not an investigative agency, right? I think that's where a lot of compliance officers get confused.
Yes, that is the most critical distinction. The FIU is an intelligence agency. It cannot arrest anyone. It cannot prosecute. It doesn't even have the power to freeze an account on its own.
Right. So when my team files an STR, the FIU isn't going to send police to the branch the next day.
Exactly. That's a huge misconception.
Yeah.
The FIU takes your STR and they use it to build a broader intelligence package. They do tactical analysis, which is connecting your single STR to maybe a dozen others from different banks.
No, I see.
And then there's strategic analysis, which is what we're looking at today, building typologies and threat pictures across thousands of reports.
And then they disseminate that to law enforcement.
Right. They package it up and send it to the Department of Money Laundering Investigation, the Nepal Police, the CIA, or the Department of Revenue Investigation, depending on the predicate offense.
Well, so as a practitioner, let's talk about the reports themselves. Because we have different tools in our arsenal. We have the STR, which is triggered by actual suspicion of money laundering or terrorist financing.
Right.
But then we also have the SAR, the Suspicious Activity Report.
Yeah, and how does your team differentiate those in practice?
Well, for us, an STR is usually tied to a completed transaction. But a SAR is when the activity itself is weird, even if money didn't ultimately move. Like if a customer asks a lot of highly specific questions about our AML thresholds and then decides not to open an account.
That's a perfect example of a SAR. It's behavioral intelligence.
Right. And then, of course, we have the TTRs, the threshold transaction reports, which are just mandatory filings for any cash or cash equivalent transaction over a certain limit.
Right, which brings us back to your government employee structuring his deposits to stay under that exact limit.
Exactly. But, my team files SARs and STRs regularly. And like I said earlier, we rarely hear back from the FIU. So how do I know if our reporting is actually useful? What does good STR quality actually look like to an analyst?
It's all about the narrative. A bad STR just spits out an algorithm alert. Transaction volume exceeded 200% of baseline. That tells me nothing.
Right. It's just data, not intelligence.
Exactly. A good STR tells a story. Who is the customer? What is their expected behavior? Why does this specific transaction make no economic sense? And crucially, what did the bank do to verify the discrepancy?
So including things like adverse media or previous interactions with the teller.
Yes, absolutely. And what completely changed the game for how the FIU processes this narrative is GoML.
Oh, right. The UNODC platform.
Yeah, it's a software platform built by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. When Nepal adopted it, it was a total paradigm shift.
Because before that, everything was just manual, right?
Right.
Paper and disconnected databases.
It was a nightmare. But now, the FIU has over 4,000 institutions connected to GoML. It shifted everything from paper to digital, which means analysts can instantly cross-reference data.
Wait, 4,000? But surely some are still lagging behind, right?
Oh, yeah. Some smaller cooperatives are still trying to file manually, but the FIU is cracking down on that. Filing manually is now essentially a massive supervisory risk flag. If you aren't on GoAML, you are a systemic vulnerability.
That makes sense. And speaking of who is filing, I was looking at the reporting landscape data in the annual reports. The concentration is pretty wild.
It really is. What stood out to you?
Well, commercial banks completely dominate the reporting. Something like 76% of all STRs and SARs come from commercial banks alone.
Yeah.
And the value concentration is massive. We're talking about an STR and SAR value of around 38,880 crore NPR sitting within the commercial banking sector.
Which is astronomical.
It is, and it tells us that, on one hand, commercial banks have the most robust transaction monitoring systems. We're catching the volume. But on the other hand, it means the illicit actors are absolutely heavily targeting the primary banking infrastructure.
Right, which is exactly why I want to go back to the bus conductor typology you read about in the report.
Yeah.
Because that perfectly illustrates how they target commercial banks.
Oh, yes. The 56 million rupee bus conductor. Let's really get into that.
So just to reset for you if you're listening, the FIU flagged a case where a guy claiming to be a retail bus conductor deposited 2.9 million Nepalese rupees in physical cash.
Right, spread across 5 different transactions at different branches.
Exactly. In over 3 months, that balloons to 56 million NPR at a single bank.
Which is just a glaring, obvious mismatch. I mean, my transaction monitoring team would flag that and file an STR immediately. But what completely blew my mind when reading this report is what the FIU saw after that STR was filed.
Right, because your bank only sees its own perimeter. You see the 56 million,
Yeah.
But when the FIU analysts pulled the GoAML data, they aggregated the threshold transaction reports across the entire banking sector for this specific individual.
And the total was just staggering.
It really was. The intelligence revealed that this guy actually deposited 715 million NPR in cash into various firm accounts.
715 million.
Plus another 297 million NPR into personal accounts across different banks.
Yeah.
We're talking over 1 billion rupees in physical cash. He was eventually arrested by the Nepal police for running a Hundi operation.
Okay, wait. Let's unpack this right now, because the compliance pushback here has to be severe. How in the world does a single individual walk into bank branches and physically deposit 715 million rupees across various firm accounts without triggering an immediate sector-wide freeze?
It's the siloing of data.
But just think about the physical weight of that much cash. What does this massive blind spot say about how banks communicate? If my bank sees 56 million and the bank down the street sees 100 million, we are both entirely blind to the aggregate threat.
Yeah, you're fighting a war with one eye closed. And underground banking networks, specifically Hundi operators, know this. They exploit this fragmentation.
So how does the Hundi network actually operate in this context? Because people hear Hundi and just think hawala or informal money transfer.
Right. It's essentially an informal, trust-based ledger system.
Mm-hmm.
Money doesn't physically cross borders. So, say a Nepali migrant worker in a foreign jurisdiction wants to send money home. They give cash to a foreign Hundi agent.
Okay.
The agent contacts their counterpart in Nepal. The ledger's updated. But now that counterpart in Nepal needs to source domestic Nepalese rupees to pay the worker's family.
Ah, so they
Okay.
have to generate the local cash to settle the debt.
Exactly. And where do they get it?
Yeah.
From the domestic shadow economy,
Hmm.
tax evasion, illicit markets. But to pay the recipients, they need that cash in the banking system.
So they use mules.
Yes, they use local representatives like our bus conductor.
Hmm.
His job is just to smurf this locally generated illicit cash into domestic accounts.
So he's not the criminal mastermind?
No, not at all.
He's literally just the foot soldier taking bags of cash, hitting different branches, and creating a blizzard of transactions to obscure the source. And because my monitoring system doesn't talk to the bank across the street, the FIU is the only one who can put the puzzle together.
That is precisely it. The operators rely entirely on your compliance systems stopping at your front door. By the time the FIU aggregates the TTRs through GoML, analyzes it, and disseminates it to the police, the money is often already layered and gone.
That is incredibly frustrating from a compliance standpoint.
It is. But what's even more fascinating and honestly more terrifying for your team is how this traditional physical cash mule model is rapidly evolving.
Right, the digital pivot.
Yeah, we are moving from duffel bags of cash to instant interbank transfers and online gaming syndicates.
And this is where the compliance nightmare truly accelerates. Because the FIU report highlights an absolute explosion of illicit funds flowing through online betting platforms. Sites like OneUpsBet, FIFIA, MetaBet.
Even though they are explicitly illegal in Nepal.
Exactly. They're heavily advertised on social media, they sponsor local influencers, and the typologies show a profound shift in tactics. We aren't looking for a guy with a bag of cash anymore. We're looking at a highly automated digital web.
Right. So let's walk through that specific interbank payment system, or IPS, in case the FIU flag.
Yeah, please do. Because IPS is supposed to be this great efficiency tool for the economy.
Well, the bad guys think it's efficient too. The FIU found a case where a massive volume of small value transactions totaling 5.3 million NPR was deposited into a single retail account.
Okay, 5.3 million, but not in cash.
No, completely digital.
Yeah.
It came in via IPS from 432 different individual accounts, and those accounts were spread across 35 different banks and financial institutions.
So 432 different people sending microdeposits to one guy?
Exactly, but it's the velocity that's the real indicator here. That 5.3 million was nearly instantaneously transferred out to a completely different, entirely unrelated set of individuals via IPS, same day or early the next morning.
So if you're listening, imagine your bank account acting as a high-speed digital turnstile. Money spins in from hundreds of disconnected sources and instantly spins out to hundreds of different destinations.
Leaving a zero balance.
Right. The FIU noted this was entirely unreasonable for a retail profile. But here's the part that is deeply problematic for my team. Who actually owns these turnstile accounts? Are these like sophisticated offshore shell companies?
No, that's the insidious part. They are everyday people. The betting syndicates actively recruit people to rent out their personal accounts for a flat commission.
Just normal retail customers?
Yep. The syndicate takes the account number, and they display it dynamically via an API on the betting platform for a short window. Gamblers deposit into it, the syndicate sweeps it.
Wow.
But it gets worse. They also recruit small business units as fronts. Stationery shops, retail grocery stores, auto repair workshops. They use them to layer the funds, commingling the betting money with legitimate business revenue.
Yes. The report has that highly specific case about the B-Shoes collection.
Exactly. Owned by a Mr. S.
Right. His mobile number, which was tied to his digital wallet and bank accounts, was literally found advertised directly on the 1xBet site as a deposit conduit. The police verified it, linked it to his physical shoe store, and arrested him.
A shoe store acting as a casino cashier.
Exactly. So I have a direct analytical challenge for you. In an era of instant digital payments where the central bank is begging businesses to use QR codes and IPS to reduce cash, how does my transaction monitoring team actually differentiate between a legitimate shoe store paying its vendors via IPS and a mule account cycling thousands of microdeposits for an offshore betting syndicate? Because to a standard algorithm, volume is just volume.
That is the multi-million rupee question right there. And the honest answer is it requires a fundamental shift in how you code your detection scenarios. If you only look at aggregate volume, a busy shoe store during festival season looks exactly like a betting mule.
Right. They both have hundreds of inbound IPS hits.
Exactly. The differentiation lies entirely in network analysis and transaction velocity. Think of a legitimate business like a reservoir. Revenue flows in from local streams customers buying shoes over a week or a month.
It pools there.
Right, it builds up an operating balance. And then it's released in large logical batches to pay wholesale vendors, rent, payroll. It has commercial rhythm.
That makes perfect sense. The business needs that working capital just to survive.
Exactly. A betting mule account does not act like a reservoir. Analysts call it a starburst pattern. Or, frankly, it acts like a sneeze.
A sneeze.
Yeah, hundreds of tiny droplets come in from geographically dispersed, unrelated people and instantly, violently get expelled outward to another completely unrelated group.
And it leaves a zero or near zero balance.
Right. Legitimate businesses hold capital. Mules sweep their accounts clean instantly because the syndicate doesn't want liquidity trapped in a local node where it could be frozen.
That distinction, the commercial reservoir versus the starburst sweeping,
Yeah.
that is exactly the kind of actionable intelligence we need. It means we have to tune our systems to look at dwell time. How long does the capital sit? What's the logical relationship between sender and receiver?
Exactly.
Because if you're managing a retail portfolio right now and your local auto repair shop suddenly has 400 micro deposits a day, your system might just be congratulating them on a great quarter, when really they've rented their account to a casino.
It's a massive vulnerability.
It really is. But let's pivot to how this manipulation of trust looks on an international scale. We're moving from domestic digital mules to international corporate cyber fraud.
Oh, the spear phishing case. Yeah, the vulnerabilities here shift from retail algorithms to the human element at the corporate trade finance desk.
This case is terrifying.
The FIU details a textbook case of a spear phishing trap that completely compromised a trade transaction.
So we have a company, ABC PVT Ltd. They're an importer of computer accessories here in Kathmandu.
And they have a regular supplier, XYZ PVT Ltd, based in Singapore. They do business regularly. There's established trust.
Right. And the timeline that FIU lays out is critical here. ADC PVT Ltd. receives a proforma invoice via email for a shipment of hard disks. The email looks exactly like it came from their usual contact in Singapore. The invoice formatting is perfect.
But it's compromised.
Exactly. The hackers altered one incredibly critical piece of information. They changed the receiving bank account details from the standard CITI bank account in Singapore to Lloyds Bank PLC in the United Kingdom.
Right.
So the Nepali importer takes this altered invoice, walks into their local commercial bank, and requests a wire transfer to settle the import. The Nepali bank processes it, checks the boxes, and wires $17,520 to Lloyds Bank in the UK.
And inevitably, the real supplier in Singapore never gets the money. They start asking, hey, where's our payment?
Which prompts a panic.
Exactly. Weeks later, the forensic analysis reveals a deeply sophisticated cyber intrusion. The email account of the Kathmandu importer had been entirely compromised. The hackers were just sitting silently in the server for weeks.
Just watching.
Yeah, monitoring the flow, learning the tone, learning the invoice amounts, and they waited for the exact right moment to inject the spear phishing email. And to buy themselves time to launder the money out of the UK, the hackers actually spoofed emails back to the Singapore company, pretending to be the Nepali importer, making excuses for the delay.
That is so brazen, and the fallout is brutal. When the Nepali bank realizes they wired funds to a fraudulent account, they immediately send a swift message to Lloyds Bank requesting to, quote, call bank funds under scam.
Right, an MT-192 recall message.
Exactly, but I have to stop here because people outside of banking misunderstand how SWIFT works. It isn't a magic reverse button.
No, it is not.
It's a secure telex. If you send an MT-103, you are instructing the bank to credit the customer. If you realize you were defrauded, you send an MT-192 recall. But that is basically asking, pretty please, give it back. If the criminal has already withdrawn the cash or bought crypto, the money is gone. The UK bank isn't going to take the loss for your mistake.
That is the harsh reality of immutable ledger transfers. Once it clears, it's out of your hands.
But I have to push back on the human error aspect here. From a compliance and risk standpoint, I just don't buy that this is a minor oversight. Why didn't the glaring discrepancy between a Singaporean supplier and a United Kingdom bank account trigger a mandatory manual review by the trade finance desk?
I know, it seems obvious in hindsight.
You have a known Asian entity suddenly asking to be paid in Europe. That should break every geographic risk rule we have.
It should, but it's the ultimate blind spot created by cognitive routine.
You think they just got tired?
Absolutely. When you sit at a trade desk and process hundreds of complex letters of credit and invoices a week, cognitive fatigue sets in. The clerk saw a familiar customer, a familiar supplier name, and an amount consistent with past imports. The brain just smooths over the geographic disconnect.
That's terrifying.
Spear phishing works because it hijacks established trust. They didn't break the bank's encryption firewalls. They just tricked a tired clerk into trusting a modified PDF. Your billion-dollar security apparatus is useless if the human element fails to ask basic logical questions.
It's an incredibly painful lesson. The takeaway for any compliance officer listening is non-negotiable. You have to verify any change in standard settlement instructions at a band. Pick up the phone. Call the supplier in Singapore on a verified number. Do not just reply to the email.
Exactly.
But as we look at borderless deception, it's not just corporate wire fraud. The intelligence reveals how everyday retail individuals are using new consumer products for illegal virtual asset purchases. Let's talk about the crypto camouflage.
Oh, the prepaid dollar card case. This is a fascinating intersection of new tech and strict regulations.
Because crypto is totally illegal in Nepal, right?
Right. Purchasing, trading, mining virtual assets like Bitcoin or Tether are currently illegal.
Yeah.
The central bank doesn't recognize them as currency. But to let people participate in the global digital economy, banks can offer prepaid dollar cards with strict annual limits.
Like for paying for Netflix or software subscriptions.
Exactly. So the FIU analyzed this case involving a customer we'll call Mr. R. He gets a dollar card and loads it with $350. His stated purpose to the bank was that he needed to pay for Facebook ad boosts for his small business.
Which is a completely standard low-risk justification.
Completely normal.
Yeah.
But then the bank's monitoring system flags two incredibly bizarre point-of-sale transactions.
Okay, what were they?
The first is a charge of $14.26, and the raw data remarks read, POS Tron at crypto payments.
Wow, not very subtle.
No. And the second is a charge of $8.25 with the remark, POS Tron at jewelry.
So the bank flags it and brings him in.
Right. They bring Mr. R in for questioning. And his cover story is truly something to behold. He tells the compliance officers that a customer of his, a Mr. G, who supposedly owns a local jewelry shop, walked in, handed him physical cash, and asked him to use his digital dollar card to purchase jewelry online for him.
I'm sorry, I'm genuinely laughing. The absurdity of that cover story is almost comical.
It really is.
It's exactly why human intelligence has to supplement automated alerts. Let's break down the logic of that lie. You have a customer claiming that a local jewelry shop owner, someone who deals in high-value physical gold and gems, paid him physical cash so he could make an international jewelry purchase of exactly $8.25.
It's structurally nonsensical.
You cannot buy international jewelry, account for shipping to Nepal, pay customs duties, and settle the whole thing for $8.
It defies basic economics.
But it highlights a really technical intelligence tool we have to leverage. Merchant category codes or MCC data and raw text strings in POS remarks. A standard system might not block an $8 transaction because it's too low to trigger an alert.
Right.
But the phrase crypto payments in the settlement data is the smoking gun. Mr. R wasn't buying jewelry or boosting Facebook ads. He was testing the plumbing.
Exactly. He was mapping the block list.
He was making microtransactions to see if our filters would catch crypto on-ramps masked under vague merchant descriptors.
Those $14 and $8 charges are exploratory network probes. Bad actors use prepaid cards to figure out what MCC codes the bank has restricted. If the $14.26 crypto transaction clears without freezing the account, he has his answer.
And the next transaction won't be $14?
No, it'll be the absolute maximum allowable limit on the card dumped straight into Binance or Coinbase.
This proves that analyzing raw text strings and cross-referencing MCC codes is absolutely non-negotiable now.
Completely agree.
Well, so we've seen how bad actors exploit cash networks and how they manipulate digital trade flows. But where the FIU report takes a truly dark turn is when it details how people exploit systemic crises and human empathy.
Yeah, weaponizing crises.
Let's start with the pandemic. When COVID-19 lockdowns hit, global supply chains froze, public desperation peaked, and predictably, we see opportunistic profiteering.
Crises create massive volatility, which is the perfect smokescreen for money laundering and tax evasion. The FIU details a case where a retail customer used a personal savings account to receive a massive inward remittance.
How massive?
9 million NPR, roughly $75,000 US, via an inward telex from what the report calls Country A.
Okay, stop right there. 9 million rupees of commercial funds landing in a retail personal savings account is an immediate typological red flag. It's the cardinal sin of banking hygiene.
Right. You don't mix business revenue with personal savings.
No, every bank's terms explicitly forbid using a retail account for commercial purposes. But what happens next?
A few days later, The customer transfers the entire sum internally to their own current account. Then, they execute a telegraphic transfer, a standard TT, to a supplier in country B to import massive quantities of medical masks and infrared temperature guns.
Right in the middle of the lockdown shortages.
Exactly. This is a masterclass in tax evasion and running an unregistered shadow business. By receiving the $75K into a personal account, they're deliberately hiding their inward business remittances from the government.
They're understating sales revenue because legally the business doesn't exist.
Right. They were capturing massive short-term arbitrage profits by importing desperately needed supplies, selling them at a huge markup locally, and completely bypassing corporate taxes.
And the FIU disseminated this to the Inland Revenue Department for tax recovery, right?
Yes, they did.
But what I find fascinating is how this was initially caught. It wasn't just the transaction volume. The FIU highlights the crucial role of adverse media monitoring here.
Oh, the news reports.
Yeah. This individual was actually featured in several local newspaper reports about their massive medical supply imports. When the bank's compliance team combined those adverse news articles with the unusual flow of funds through a retail account, it provided the undeniable narrative needed for a high-quality STR.
It proves compliance cannot exist in a vacuum of spreadsheets. You have to read the news. You have to understand the macroeconomic environment.
Absolutely. But if that case is the cynical exploitation of a physical crisis, the next typology is the exploitation of emotional vulnerability. We need to talk about the YouTuber case.
From an intelligence standpoint, this is one of the most morally reprehensible typologies in the entire report.
It is incredibly dark. The report details a highly famous local YouTuber and TikToker. She built a massive platform by ostensibly helping the poor and people needing medical treatment.
Right.
She leveraged her fame to initiate a massive global crowdsourcing campaign. She appealed directly to the Nepali diaspora people working in the Gulf, in Australia, the U.S. soliciting donations for charity, and she collected 1.75 crore in PR.
17.5 million rupees.
Into a single personal bank account through thousands of small-value remittance donations.
The psychology is devastating. She sold grief, she monetized human empathy and packaged it as content. But the financial forensics, the cold ledger data, reveals the truth. Of the 1.75 crore collected, 1.3 crore was just sitting unused in her personal account.
The people she filmed never saw it.
No. And of the 45 lakhs that were actually spent, the FIU analysis showed it didn't go to hospitals. It went toward physical gold, expensive jewelry, and her personal lifestyle expenses.
And to obscure the paper trail, she utilized a friend's account as a mule to layer portions of these fraudulent funds.
Yeah.
So as a former analyst, I have a practical question for you. When a bank sees global funds flowing in, thousands of micro amounts marked charity landing in a personal account, at what threshold do you legally intervene? Do we wait until it hits $1 million rupees?
The intervention shouldn't be based on a monetary threshold at all. It has to be based on the regulatory mandate regarding foreign aid. In Nepal, receiving foreign funds for charity or NGO purposes requires explicit prior approval from authorities like the Social Welfare Council.
Right.
A personal savings account is never the appropriate vehicle for international charity pooling. The moment a bank identifies a pattern of global micro-remittances flooding a personal account for donations, it's an immediate regulatory breach.
So you freeze it instantly.
You freeze the inward flow and demand the legal authorization documents. This case is a stark warning that social media influence is increasingly being used as a primary placement vehicle for fraud.
Which brings us to the most complex, systemic section of our deep dive. We're leaving behind the individual opportunists and moving into systemic institutional abuse, high-level corruption, and trade-based money laundering, or TBML.
Big leagues.
Exactly. This is where the damage is measured in the degradation of national infrastructure. The FIU report provides a chilling comparison between local embezzlement and international corruption. Let's start with the crude level. The Upukta Samiti case.
Right. The Upukta Samiti, or consumer group, is a local mechanism meant to empower communities to manage small development projects, like paving a road. But the FIU details a case with a Mr. A, an elected ward chairperson.
Okay.
He used his political position to form a committee for a local project, and then engaged in blatant nepotism by putting his own wife on the executive board.
And the flow of funds is tragically simple. The government funds for the project are deposited from the state treasury into the Samiti's official bank account. From there, they are transferred directly to the personal account of the ward chairperson's wife, disguised as project expenses.
And then the final integration. She transfers it directly into the personal account of the ward chairperson himself.
It's direct, unvarnished embezzlement of public funds, using a spouse as a painfully transparent layering mechanism.
It's crude. It leaves a massive paper trail. But the FIU contrasts this with a case of high-level corruption that shows immense transnational sophistication. Enter Mr. B.
Who is Mr. B?
He's described as a high-level official of a public entity. His mandate involved the procurement of highly expensive, specialized IT components for the state. The investigation revealed that the local partner of the international supplier chosen for this massive contract was his close relative.
Massive conflict of interest. Rigged procurement. But how did he handle the proceeds? Because unlike the ward chair, he didn't just wire it to his wife, right?
Exactly. Mr. B never touched a single rupee of the bribe money in Nepal. The report explicitly states the criminal proceeds, the kickbacks for the IT contract, were settled entirely in a foreign jurisdiction, disguised as consultancy services paid into an offshore account he controlled.
And that offshore settlement is the bridge to trade-based money laundering. If you are a corrupt syndicate, how do you move millions of rupees out of Nepal to pay off that offshore account without triggering capital flight alarms at the central bank?
You use trade. You manipulate physical invoicing to disguise the money.
The FIU report gives a brilliant example of this. They detail a Company N, a Nepalese firm, supposedly importing huge amounts of IT products from a Singapore-based supplier, Company C.
Right. And immediately, the red flags fly. The FIU found through corporate registries that the ultimate beneficial owners of both the Nepalese importing company and the Singaporean exporting company were the exact same Nepalese individuals.
They are trading with themselves across international borders,
Right.
sitting on both sides of the contract. But the highly technical smoking gun revolves around documents against acceptance, or DAA. The report notes the DAAs were deliberately left pending. For the listener who doesn't work in trade finance, explain how a DAA works and why pending is the ultimate tell for laundering.
It's deep in the plumbing of global trade. In a legitimate transaction using DAA, the exporter in Singapore ships the goods. But they don't send the title, the bill of lading, directly to the buyer. They send it through the banking system to the buyer's bank.
Okay, so the bank holds the title.
Right. To get those documents and claim the goods at customs, the buyer must legally accept the attached bill of exchange. They sign a digital promise via SWIFT to pay the exporter later. Once they accept, the bank hands over the document.
What if they're left indefinitely pending?
It means the buyer never picked up the documents, which means the physical goods were never claimed at customs. Or, much more likely in TBML, the goods never existed in the first place. The import transaction was a ghost.
Let me translate the operational reality of this. Company N in Nepal initiated a massive payment order to Company C in Singapore to pay for IT components. The money legally leaves Nepal as a standard trade settlement. The central bank approves the FX because it looks legitimate on paper.
Right.
But because the DAAs are pending, we know the IT components never arrived. The trade was a fiction, created solely to justify transferring state funds to a shell company in Singapore. And those millions are then used to settle offshore corruption payments for people like Mr. B.
Global trade, weaponized as a shadow banking system. And the choice of IT components is highly deliberate. You don't use commodities like wheat or steel because those have transparent, globally indexed pricing. A customs officer knows what steel costs.
But the valuation of bespoke IT hardware is incredibly subjective.
Exactly. It's incredibly easy to over-invoice specialized servers by 500% to extract capital, and a border inspector can't prove it's fraudulent. It's frictionless wealth extraction.
Which brings us to our final and honestly most staggering topic. We've talked about physical cash, cyber fraud, global trade. But the massive bombshell typology in this report revolves around new payment technologies, specifically payment service providers, or PSPs.
The digital wallets.
Right. As Nepal digitizes, the central bank licensed PSTs to promote financial inclusion and reduce cash reliance.
The irony here is profound. A system designed to reduce cash became the hyper-efficient vehicle for injecting billions of illegal physical cash into the formal banking system.
The modus operandi is a masterclass in systemic penetration.
It is. A licensed PSP established a wide network of local physical agents. These agents were supposed to be like small kiosks, helping retail customers load small amounts of cash into their digital wallets to pay utility bills.
But what do they actually do?
These agents began depositing astronomically huge amounts of physical cash directly into the PSP's own corporate bank accounts from various remote locations.
And the scale. The scale is hard to comprehend. We're not talking about a few thousand rupees. The report states that during the investigation, it was discovered that a single person deposited 95 crore NPR, 950 million rupees in physical cash into the bank account of one specific PSP.
Think about the logistics of moving nearly 1 billion rupees in cash.
It's insane, and once the cash hit the PSP's corporate account, the PSP would digitally credit the agent's virtual wallet. The agent could then instantaneously transfer that digital balance anywhere in the country.
The PSP, operating under a tech license, was essentially acting as a massive, unregulated placement vehicle for the shadow economy.
And it gets fundamentally worse when you look at the technical architecture. The investigation revealed the PSP's internal ledgers were so poorly controlled, or deliberately compromised, that agent accounts were loaded with massive digital funds without any actual physical cash being deposited at the bank at all.
Wait, what? They were just typing numbers into a database.
Exactly. The agent would log into the portal, assert, "I received cash," and the system instantly credited their wallet with digital fiat. They created digital money out of thin air to facilitate transfers.
That is deeply alarming.
When the Nepal police finally raided this network, they uncovered the endgame. Billions of rupees were channeled through this PSP network to settle domestic payments for massive transnational illegal gold smuggling operations and Hundi syndicates.
The gold smugglers needed a way to move billions without alerting commercial banks, and they found it in the digital wallet ecosystem.
This is where I have to aggressively push back on the systemic failure here. How does a licensed tech platform become a billion-rupee laundromat without anyone noticing? As a compliance officer, the failure isn't just on the PSP. It's squarely on the commercial banks holding the PSP's corporate accounts.
Absolutely.
If a single individual deposits 950 million rupees in physical cash into a PSP's operating account, why wasn't that account frozen immediately? It exposes the fatal vulnerability of licensing fintech platforms when supervisory oversight lags years behind the technology.
We gave them the keys to the payment gateways without checking their locks.
We bragged about frictionless onboarding, but forgot that friction is the only thing that stops money laundering.
It is the inherent risk of rapid financial innovation. Regulators want financial inclusion, but bad actors adopt technology infinitely faster than compliance frameworks can adapt. The gold smugglers realized a fundamental arbitrage opportunity. A commercial bank will interrogate you over a 5 million rupee cash deposit. A PSP agent network will absorb a 950 million rupee deposit without blinking.
It's regulatory arbitrage on an economy destabilizing scale.
And the FIU notes those illegal gold and Hundi cases linked to this PSP are currently being prosecuted in the courts.
So, as we pull all these disparate threads together, from street-level cash mules to the highest levels of digital finance, we've traversed the entire spectrum. The bus conductor, the 1xBet IPS transfers, the hacked SWIFT network, the $8 crypto probes, pandemic tax evasion, corrupted charity, high-level TBML, and finally, compromised PSPs. What is the grand unified theory here?
The overarching theme is ruthless adaptation. Money laundering in Nepal isn't just a guy with a suitcase of cash anymore. It is highly digitized, integrated into legitimate global trade, and ruthlessly efficient at exploiting both new tech and human empathy. The illicit economy mirrors the legitimate economy perfectly.
And that leads directly to our call to action for you, the listener. If you work in compliance, risk management, or regulation, this proves that FIU intelligence reports are not just bureaucratic paperwork to appease auditors, they are active operational playbooks.
The criminals are telling you exactly how they operate.
If your monitoring systems aren't specifically tuned today to look for that stationary shop processing impossible IPS velocity, or the IT importer with pending DAAs, you are completely missing the crime occurring on your own servers. The intelligence is out there. The FIU actively directs the public to their website at nrb.org.np/FIU to access their unredacted strategic analysis reports. You have to read them.
Because the threat is evolving while we sleep.
Yeah.
Every new payment license, every new digital product creates a brand new vector.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought that wasn't in this report, but looms over everything we've discussed. Think back to that bus conductor, painstakingly spreading his cash deposits to avoid detection. Today, a digital agent moves 1,000 times that amount with a keystroke.
Right.
But as Nepal and the global financial system hurdles towards central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, where every single digital rupee is recorded on an immutable state ledger, will these typologies finally disappear? Will the FIU finally have perfect visibility? Or Are we just forcing the underground economy to abandon fiat currency entirely and move to completely untraceable, privacy-centric shadow financial systems where the FIU won't be able to see them at all?
Hmm.
Are we making the system more transparent or just pushing the darkness further out of reach?
That is the ultimate question.
Let us know what you think. Until next time, keep digging.